3, 2, 1. Welcome. Today we're talking about protecting our oceans. And my guests are, let me get up their titles here. Oh my gosh. Here we are. Hi, Sarah. Sarah Whalen is Executive Director of the Healthy Ocean Coalition.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Sarah. And Jenna Valente, Director of Advocacy at the Healthy Ocean Coalition.
Hi, it's so great to be back on the show.
Yeah. Jenna was on earlier, and Jenna and Sarah and I have been working together for years on saving the ocean.
Yeah.
And the way we save it is by working together and by having diverse groups coming together. And Sarah and Jenna are the best at like getting us all to listen to each other and keeping us posted with what's happening.
Yeah, maybe they need us in Congress.
Well, unfortunately, when we go to Congress, we're organized because you've organized us to speak to them and stuff. And we come on like an organized force talking to individual representatives one by one. But having been on the floor with the representatives, it's been so great to have Jenna right there and say, "Oh, Jenna, pick up and carry on the conversation from there and stuff." But,
yeah, I mean, the Healthy Ocean Coalition collaboration is at the heart of what we do. So, we are just as strong as all of our members, and we love going in and doing that kind of work with you and all of the rest of our coalition members.
Yeah, and what I love about the Healthy Oceans Coalition is that you give us access and then the voice to speak to our legislators. So we'll get together and talk about what the issue is and develop our speaking styles about, getting together and talking to, because, you think you understand it and suddenly you're in this office with these flags around you and this high-ranking famous person looking at you. And you just, so it's really great that you guys have. And so part of this program is for people to learn more about the work of the Healthy Ocean Coalition and to join us. And so later on, Sarah and Jenna will tell us about how to be more involved. But this show is dedicated to a new initiative by President Biden to clean up the oceans and basically to address climate change and the preservation of so much of the wildness, not just in the ocean, but around the nation. And so I'm going to ask Sarah Whalen to tell us about President Biden's his Conserving and Restoring America the Beautiful, not dramatic. Tell us about that.
Yes, it sounds very eloquent, doesn't it? It just like rolls off the tongue, and who doesn't love America the Beautiful? I'm really excited to talk about it. So I'm going to step us back to January. So a week after President Biden was sworn in as president, there was a week of focus days that the administration had. And one of those days, January 27th, was Climate Day, where the administration took a bunch of executive actions and sort of laid out their whole of government approach for how they saw themselves and the federal government interacting with private industry, society, and nonprofits and citizens and communities around climate as a crisis that the federal government has a responsibility for. And so one of those actions they took that day was signing Executive Order 14008, which is called Tackling the Climate Crisis at Home and Abroad. And we could probably spend an hour talking about everything that executive order did. We're here to talk about one sort of piece of it, which is setting this goal, this brand new national goal to conserve 30% of our nation's lands, waters, and ocean by 2030 as part of their approach to combating climate change and reducing inequities in access to nature and jobs, right? So it's sort of this like three-prong approach for why they said we're going to try and reach this goal, conserving 30% of lands and waters by 2030. So in this executive order, the president says Department of Interior and Department of Commerce, Department of Agriculture, and the White House Council on Environmental Quality, I want you to write a report in 90 days that sets out how are we going to, as a federal government, chart our path toward reaching this goal of protecting 30% of our lands and waters by 2030. And so on May 6th, the Secretaries of Interior, Commerce, and Agriculture, and the chair of CEQ, the Council on Environmental Quality, released this report and started off this federal initiative called Conserving and Restoring America the Beautiful. And it is this report that lays out this vision that the Biden administration has for how it wants to work collaboratively with private landowners, state governments, tribal nations, both federally recognized, state recognized, and others, stakeholders like fishermen, maritime organizations, businesses, nonprofits like the Healthy Ocean Coalition and others. And so what it does is sets forth this, it's not like, so you have like an architectural blueprint that has, the lines are long and it sets out every piece of it. This report is more of like a roadmap for how collaboratively the federal government wants to work with all of these people to chart our path toward protecting 30% of our lands, ocean, and water by 2030. That's sort of it in a nutshell.
Wow. So it's like a roadmap of bringing people together and showing different steps they can take and ways to get there. And so I understand there's like 8 principles within that initiative. And Jenna, tell us about these principles.
Yeah, so the report lays out 8 principles toward achieving the goals that Sarah mentioned. They're very much focused on locally led and locally informed conservation initiatives. And I won't dive into too much detail with each of these principles, but I think it could be helpful to walk through the 8 just to give an idea of what the report is all about and what it's calling for. So the first principle that it outlines is to pursue a collaborative and inclusive approach to conservation. And the vision for this is it'll be by building on existing examples where collaboration and consensus building have already have led to significant conservation outcomes. The second principle is to conserve America's lands and waters for the benefit of all people by centering this effort on people and communities. So again, getting back to that locally led, locally driven conservation. The third principle is to support locally led and locally designed conservation efforts. So this recommends that the federal government should support local communities to achieve their own conservation priorities and vision. The fourth principle is to honor tribal sovereignty and support the priorities of tribal nations by recognizing the sovereign authority and treaty rights of tribal nations, as well as seeking to support and help advance the priorities of American Indian, Alaska Native, Native Hawaiian, and Indigenous leaders. The fifth principle is to pursue conservation and restoration approaches that create jobs and support healthy communities through seeking benefits of conservation and restoration. So, for example, jobs are created through having a healthy fishery or through wildfire mitigation work or outdoor recreation like hunting and fishing. So that's sort of where they're coming from that angle. The sixth principle is to honor private property rights and support the voluntary stewardship efforts of private landowners and fishers. So efforts to conserve and restore America's lands and waters. That federal government is saying any of those efforts must respect the rights of private property owners. They're also really trying to get people on board that own private property to put that land or part of that land into some sort of conservation practice. The seventh principle is to use science as a guide. So really looking to scientists to inform decisions and use the best available science in their decision making and to inform any sort of conservation plan that they develop, as well as the recommendations from top scientists and subject matter experts, as well as make this information transparent and accessible. And I think it's also worth noting that in this section they call out that this includes indigenous and traditional ecological knowledge as well. And then the last principle is to build on existing tools and strategies with an emphasis on flexibility and adaptive approaches by using a wide array of existing tools and strategies to achieve this goal. So there's a lot in there. There's a lot that we could unpack. Again, I feel like Sarah mentioned that we could probably spend a whole hour talking about this and more, but that gives you an overview of what the plan outlines and some areas that we may be able to make some progress or, from the Healthy Ocean Coalition standpoint, get our membership involved and raise their voices to the federal level to help shape some of these conservation initiatives and plans that will come out of this.
Yeah, this is very exciting. As you know, in 2010, President Obama set up these regional ocean planning groups that brought the different people together to talk about this. And this really feels like it's picking up on that and recognizing those coalitions and alliances, and then being very comprehensive, very jobs focused, as well as being very much in protecting and conserving and sustaining the wildlife that we have going on in the oceans and beyond. This is not just an ocean bill. So Sarah, what else is in the report that's interesting for us to know?
I think there's a lot in there that we could pick up on. I think some of the interesting other pieces in the report are that while they don't, like I said, they don't lay out this prescribed path, which I think some of us would have liked a little bit more of a path of what's next, what are our next points of engagement for how we have received this report, what we want to plug in. It does sort of outline some of the immediate next steps that the federal government is thinking of taking, or where its focus is going to be on. And I think some of those provide some opportunities for that locally led conservation and engagement. I love your mention, Rob, about those regional planning bodies from the Obama administration, because those still exist. There's one here in the Northeast, and it would be great because it's a table that has tribes and federal government, federal agencies, and state agencies sitting at the same table to use some of that pre-existing knowledge and coordination to take the next step toward collaboration, which is where this report is really trying to lead the federal government. And so I think that that's one important piece. Like one of their next important steps is to support tribally led conservation and restoration priorities. I think that's a really important piece that, the federal government hasn't really seen in several years. There are the National Marine Sanctuaries process has some really interesting opportunities in sort of the pool potential new sanctuaries. I love the idea that the report has about extending wildlife corridors, so reconnecting nature. We've inadvertently, created little pockets of nature, and so how do we reconnect them to better sustain wildlife? I think those are a couple of really neat next steps that the federal government has targeted. And then another one is sort of rectifying nature-derived communities, which is another really important piece. And so I think those three things are the ones that I'm really looking forward to seeing sort of what their next steps are, and how they're going to use federal resources to make things happen, right? So like one of the things is the federal government's commitment to ensure that like 40% of overall benefits flow to disadvantaged communities. I think that's a really important piece, and it's interesting to see how that plays out.
What does that mean, 40% benefits flow to?
Well, so like investments from the federal government, 40% would go to disadvantaged communities.
Okay, so the money would go to disadvantaged communities.
Yeah, disadvantaged and frontline communities.
Yeah, to create more.
Frontline are the ones closest to the resource, like.
Correct. So like if the communities that are in the surrounding area around a oil refinery, or where plastics are made, or near like a Superfund site, like any community that is really like at the direct front line of being impacted by polluting businesses or areas that are already polluted.
Interesting. Because environmental justice is so important. Sarah, did I cut you off?
Sorry? No, not at all.
Okay, Jenna, tell us more about environmental justice.
About environmental justice, I'm like, that's an entirely.
Well, this overlaps.
We should do a whole other show on that.
But this overlaps.
I think the thing that I love about this report, and I feel like I'm kind of a broken record here, but it really, really, really is highlighting that these plans that eventually will come out of this report are fed by local knowledge and local interests and local needs. So they're not interested in coming into an area and telling them what they need. They are asking each community to help them figure out the best way to support their own locally led conservation initiatives. Whether that is, like Sarah said, by helping provide resources, or, taking a different look at what conservation initiatives look like and can mean. So there will be the classic initiatives to protect like our ocean and coast, so things like our monuments offshore. But there are conversations going on and things that we've been a part of where they're looking at how do you look at really urban areas or cities and figure out where the inequities are in tree cover, in access to natural space, because that's life-changing for people. If you live in an area where you're able to access a beautiful park, your neighborhood is clean, you have shade provided by trees, versus if you don't have any of those things, the impacts of that compound on top of each other and lead to so many different real life impacts, like health problems. If you're constantly living somewhere that is a few degrees hotter than somewhere else on particularly warm days, I know we're in the Northeast and our climate is a little bit mild, but I feel like we're feeling the heat today. And I guarantee you that there are certain areas of the city of Boston that are much warmer right now than where I'm sitting in Somerville, Massachusetts. So, climate justice, not to go on into like a whole hour-long rant, is something that must be included in climate policy moving forward, because I don't see how there's any other way. You can't be making policies that only benefit one group of people or an incredibly privileged group of people. If they're going to work, they need to benefit everybody and be informed by everybody.
And so this does that. This
is calling for that. Right? It's yet to be seen if it does that, because it's so new, but it's calling for that, yes.
Well, it's more interested in planting trees in urban areas than it is in planting trees in Weston, Massachusetts or something. It understands Well, we don't know, I guess, but
Yeah, I think it I don't know if I would say it's putting more weight on it. It's actually including that in the conservation plan in a way that I personally haven't seen the federal government include in a conservation plan ever before.
woohoo, exactly. You know, so you and I live in Somerville, and we have this property called 10 Poplar Street, which is between the Target department store and in the armpit of Route 28 on the McGrath Highway, on the backside of McGrath Highway, and then beyond that is the Loop, which is an industrial area before 93, and it's all hard pan. And so we're putting in agriculture. We're going to put in potted plants. We're going to put in raised beds, and we're going to do the water storage and pumping underneath that, so that we're both managing the water and providing more green spaces. And this is expensive to do both, to provide green space and water management. You know, never mind the social amenity, but just making it, well, I do mind social amenity. We need to find these solutions that are improving the carbon and the environment and dealing with the urban problems and not gentrifying the area. So this is very exciting that they want to bring it all together. Sarah.
Yeah.
I'm going to pass it to you. We'll check our time here.
Huh?
So what are some immediate steps that we can be taking?
So like I said, you know, this is sort of a roadmap, and the next steps aren't incredibly clear for, I mean, so the government said, you know, these are some of our immediate priorities, and I think we should lean into a lot of those, some of the things that we've talked about. And I think there are other places where the government hasn't made its sort of next steps for how we engage back. So how do we provide feedback on the report? Where do we see some next steps? So I think it's a blending of both. I think it's leaning into these next steps that the federal government is saying is important to them, providing support for what local communities are saying. So if there are environmental justice organizations in Boston, in Massachusetts, who are saying these are really important things, and we want this report, we want this 30 by 30 initiative to include these things, I think it's on us to help amplify and provide support for those requests coming from communities. I think it provides us also opportunity not just to think of conservation as in creating new parks, but also preservation in finding important places, especially for us, right? We all move in sort of the ocean world, to find important places offshore or near shore that are important to protect, and advocating for the protection of those places, right? So that this isn't just one type of protection, it's multiple types of protection, but we're also remembering that some of these places need to be protected, and to not lose that component of the sort of broad spectrum of conservation that we're talking about in this report. So, you know, the HOC is specifically thinking about how do we take next steps. Next month starts National Ocean Month, and so we're going to have a whole toolkit for our members. A bunch of it will be up on our website at healthyoceancoalition.org, where you can take steps to both say thank you to the Biden administration for taking this really important step, and also urging them to take next steps for how they concretely engage communities and stakeholders like conservation organizations like ours.
Wow, that's really great. Now, well, we've just got a couple minutes left, but the Ocean Coalition has people from all over the country. So we're looking for not just New Englanders, but if you're sitting in Cleveland and you've noticed how the Sea Grant people put out 2, fish reefs out there and stuff, or whatever, we would urge you to join us and inform the other members of what's going on in your neighborhood. And that helps to spark, more conversations about what we can ask for in our own neighborhoods or our own landscapes.
Absolutely.
How can we learn more about Healthy Oceans Coalition?
Yeah, so as Sarah mentioned, if you visit healthyoceancoalition.org, you can learn more about who we are and what we do, as well as find our contact information there. If you'd like to reach out to me or Sarah individually, we always welcome you to do so. You can join the Healthy Ocean Coalition directly on the website, or you could also email Sarah or I. So there are two ways to do that. And then if you are somebody that enjoys using social media, we are Healthy Ocean Co. on Twitter, and we are Healthy Ocean Coalition on Facebook. So we're pretty active on both, and we would love for you to follow us and for us to stay in touch. And I hope some of you join our efforts.
Yeah, I really recommend it. It's like once a month we get together. And Jenna has another mug that doesn't have Boston Patriots on it. So if that's an issue.
Well, I actually hand painted this. The handle broke off, so I didn't.
Oh, no.
I kind of hold it this way, but I painted that mug. It might be a copyright infringement, so I hope the NFL doesn't come after me.
Well, some
I didn't
members
tell
might have
anyone, so maybe I'm safe there. But yes, Sarah got me a lovely,
that's much better. There we go.
a lovely bird mug. It's got my coffee and my water going at the same time.
So there goes my ringer. Sarah Whalen, thank you for joining us in this program.
Thank you, Rob. It's always a pleasure to hang out and chat with you about all things